Hello there, this is James S. Crofty, knows RT78, and back in January, after hearing for 2+ years that it was the greatest animated superhero movie ever made, if not the single greatest superhero movie of all time, I finally got around to watching Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, only to conclude that, yep, when you strip away all of the bells and whistles, it's exactly the same story as Spider-Man Homecoming, and I give both films 6 out of 10, meaning that although I enjoyed each of them in the moment, I have no interest in ever seeing them again. After all, in each movie, an unsure adolescent superhero becomes a true hero by learning to believe in themselves and to escape the shadow of their father figure, or in Miles Morales' case, father figures plural, otherwise known as stock superhero coming-of-age plot A7. What? You mean you didn't realise that the two Peters and Miles' dad and uncle in Spiderverse were playing exactly the same role between them as Tony Stark was in Homecoming? Either way, before you attempt to argue that Miles Morales or loser Spider-Man's character arc wasn't what made the film spectacular, the villain in Spider-Verse was motivated by the obsessive need to revive his dead loved ones regardless of the consequences suffered by anyone else, stock sympathetic supervillain motivation A2. The three comic relief alt-universe Spider-Beings had no reason to exist in the story. Doc Ock had no reason to exist in the story either. You can tell that Gwen Stacy was originally written to be the love interest until someone realised that this would disempower her, so she literally tells rather than shows her character arc about being afraid to make friends after losing her own universe's Peter Parker, until Miles Morales shows her the power of friendship. So if these characters are the reason why you love the film, then you don't love it at all, just the comic relief fan service cameos. And to add insult to injury, in working to avoid the trap of being the token female love interest, Gwen also falls into the chasm of unwittingly reinforcing the old racist taboo against depicting interracial couples on screen. On top of which, the pacing in Spider-Verse is absolutely terrible, with the first act dragging on forever and the second rushing by so quickly that we barely get to see Miles' uncle on screen before he's shot, for literally no other reason than because you can't be the real Spider-Man unless your uncle is shot. And while a Facebook friend of mine mentioned the supposed genius of Miles' animation starting off slow and clunky, but then becoming smoother and more lifelike as he learns to believe in himself, that was insultingly banal and almost gave me a migraine. Ah, but you love Pleasantville, and that movie used a similar narrative device. Yes, to complement and bring to life a beautiful, heartfelt, and get this, entirely original story, not as a redundant reiteration to artify the entire point of one of the lamest and most cliched character arcs in the history of superhero fiction. So in the end, as I struggle to understand how people can look at what are essentially exactly the same film and say that one is magnificent beyond measure and the other is merely passable at best, I feel like the real-world opposite of the black and white Spider-Man noir character, struggling to understand the concept of a Rubik's Cube. In my case, struggling to distinguish between the two as people insist that no, this shade of grey is merely mediocre, while this almost identical shade of grey is phenomenal and needs to shut up and take our money.